Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tony Peebles. I'm a parent here in Shaker. My third Shaker daughter is a sophomore. I have a daughter that's finishing Case Western Reserve with 2 degrees in psychology. And this year, and a daughter that is a junior at the John Glenn School of Public Policy at Ohio State University. They were both very active Shaker students, marching band, SCORE program, international baccalaureate program, a lot of other things. And so I'm a pretty involved parent. My wife has chaired just about every PTO that our daughters, whatever building our daughters in, my wife, Tracy Martin Peoples, Esquire, has been the president of, and we also serve on the PTO council. And most actively, I am the former chair and still a member of the Finance and Audit Committee for the Shaker School Board. So I've been on that for probably about 12 years, helping to shepherd some of these taxes that we don't like to pay, but we know are important. So it's my honor to be your moderator today and try to keep this on track. This is a panel that's been set up by the group SHARE, and if you know about SHARE, you know that they're very involved in equity and in getting engagement from parents to be involved in their children's education. For years, parents of Black American students in Shaker have mastered the art of navigating schools successfully. And so now the SHARE organization is eager to pass on some of this invaluable information to our current community. So this is the beginning of a process to continue to inform parents how to be good consumers of the school district for the benefit of their children. So you're joining us today for a panel of leaders to teach you about their hard-won lessons and successes over the years. So we'll give you some perspectives from several different decades of success in equity here in Shaker Heights community and Shaker Heights City Schools. And then we'll hear from some current students and parents about what's going on today. And then hopefully we'll have time for some breakout sessions to learn about how you can organize, self-organize, and encourage others to self-organize, to involve parents and students together and pull families together to educate and inform, to generate success. This program is sponsored by a number of folks. This Shaker Heights City Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, the Shaker Heights PTO Council, obviously Shaker Heights Schools and its Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Dr. Larry Burnley is in the back. I think most of you know him, who's our Chief Diversity Officer for the school district. Shaker Heights City Council, and of course the Shaker Heights Active Resources and Empowerment, which is SHARE. Thank you for being here, and we will get started. We have a number of speakers. I'm going to briefly introduce them. I'm going to do it all at once just to save time, and I will be brief. And the most important thing about all these panelists is they were active parents at one point, and so this is going to be interesting. First, we'll have via video, and he apologizes that he couldn't make it today, is Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr. As you know, he is the pastor emeritus of Olivet Institutional Baptist Church. He was a resident of Shaker for a long time, and his three children attended here, and he was very involved in the district, I believe back in the 1970s and 80s, and of course he's still obviously a very engaged leader in our community to this day. Second is Mr. John Addison, who has been really a civil rights leader since he was a young man, even a boy. But he came to Shaker in 1979 when he was working with Operation Push in the Shaker School District to work with the Push Self-Excellence Program. And he has 2 children that came through the Shaker Heights School District who were both very successful. And he remained in Shaker as an administrator until 2005. If I'm correct. I don't know if Dr. Deanna White, I think we'll hear from her. Oh, there she is. She moved to Shaker in 1982, and she has, I believe, 2 daughters that went through the district, and she wanted a high quality of education for them both. She has a 40-year career at Cleveland State as an administrator and as a faculty member, and her daughters and grandchildren also graduated from Shaker Heights High, and she still is part of our community here in Shaker. Judge Emanuela Groves, who is now in the District Court of Appeals in 2000 Since 2021, right?
Yes.
She previously served as a judge in the Cleveland Municipal Court. She founded Caring Communities Organized for Education, which was a precursor organization to what we have today. I'm sorry, I was supposed to be.
That's all right.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. You gotta have your professor here to keep you on track. She has had two children that attended the district. Both are graduates of Princeton University, and her daughter has a law degree from New York University, and her son has a master's of education from the University of Pennsylvania. So her children are living proof that Shaker High School produces excellence and achievement. And of course, we have Dr. Vilma Seabird. She is a emeritus professor at Kent State University. She's been a resident of Shaker since 1985. She authored a book called Family Engagement in Black Students' Academic Success. And she did a 2-year research study on
20.
Okay, it said 2 years here, so that was my fault. 20 years, which is a lot of research on the patterns of success for Black students. So a lot of the work that we're doing here is based on some of her research because there's proven results. She's currently collaborating with Cher. She also has a book on her insights, and she's a Shaker family, and her family was a diverse family. So she also has personal experience in terms of having a diverse family here and raising a former student here in Shaker. Mr. Al Foster, as you know, he was on Shaker Heights City Council. He was involved in Shaker for 30 years. He lives in another suburb now, but he was involved in Shaker for 30 years, and he was a great leader. He was the first Black union VP for East Ohio Gas's union, and he retired from there. He also was, and we thank him for his service, he's a 25-year retired Marine, United States Marine. So we appreciate him. And he was also very involved, and his family came through Shaker as well. I apologize for that in that regard. So we're going to start with Reverend Moss, and his is a video recording. So I'm going to do my best technology-wise.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to share this moment with these distinguished panelists who've meant so much to our lives, our families, our community, and especially the Shaker Heights School District. My family and I came to Shaker in 1975 from Cincinnati, Ohio. We have always been an activist family in civil rights, human rights, and that has involved our becoming directly with and in the school systems wherever we have lived. When we moved to Shaker Heights, we had our youngest child, Otis III, at Byron, and Daphne at the middle school, and Kevin at the high school. So even if we had not wanted to be, we were involved in the Shaker system in a very special way, from kindergarten to high school and throughout those ensuing years. I was involved both with reference to our children, Edwina, my wife, and I, the children's involvement. We had some very, very fulfilling experiences and some challenging experiences at every level. Some in reference to our own children, where we had to intervene, where a teacher was concerned. I remember on one occasion, Otis III did an assignment, and there were 10 questions or 10 parts to the assignment. He got 9 right, and the teacher wrote on the paper, poor performance. And when we looked at the paper, we said, now we must have a conference with the teacher immediately. And I raised the question, if you were in sports and you were batting 900, uh, what kind of record would you get? That sounds to me like you're on your way to the Hall of Fame. Those were the kind of things that, and I would like for you to interview Otis III at some point in this process. Uh, it was necessary to have that kind of parental intervention, and we did it on behalf of other students, not just our children and our family. Secondly, we became directly involved in the election of the late Dr. Willie Williams, the first African American member of the school board in Shaker. We worked hard at that, going from home to home in meetings, and it was a challenging process, but a most fulfilling process. Since that time, there has not been, I think I'm correct, there has not been a term where an African American presence was not a living presence on the board. Uh, there are those on this panel, like Brother John Addison, who can talk specifically about Push and Push Excel. We were intricately involved in bringing that program to Shaker Heights and to other school systems throughout the nation. The Reverend Jesse Jackson and I worked together from the time of his coming to the staff of SCLC under Dr. King. Edwina, my wife, was a part of the staff at the very time that they hired Jesse Jackson as, I think, the youngest staff member of SCLC. I was in the meeting when Dr. King appointed him National Director of Operation Breadbasket at a meeting in Chicago. Reverend Jackson came to Cleveland several times, and in those visits, the Shaker Heights school system was the main school system that adopted the Push Excel program in this area. With Mr. Addison as the leader of that program that he can talk about in his own words and in his own way. I repeat, we had a child beginning at the lower school, beginning in really kindergarten, middle school, high school. I want to lift up one incident or one challenge. Bless you. I want to lift up one challenge. A family came to me and to us very disturbed about their son's interaction with one of the counselors at the high school. This young man wanted to go to Howard University. And the counselor said to him, "You don't want to go to Howard. All they do is party."
Oh, jeez.
I wish he could meet Vice President Harris. And when the parents told us about that, I said, it's time to have a conference with this individual, and we did. And the first question I raised, have you ever been to Howard? No. Do you have any dialogue, association with anyone who has attended Howard? No. I notice you have copies of books from various schools. Do you have a catalog in your library from Howard? No, but you have issued a judgment, a negative judgment about a school that you know nothing about. Really, you owe this young man an apology. We'll talk about the apology you owe to Howard and all of its graduates and faculty and staff and the history. So we had those kind of moments. There were also great moments with Push Excel that John Addison can talk about. Great moments watching our children and the children of other parents excel athletically. Otis III was a part of the football team, the basketball team, and the track team. Our older son, Kevin, was a football player in high school. Daphne was an excellent student, participating in various activities, a distinguished graduate, shouting in the living room when she received her acceptance letter to Spelman College, where she graduated. She encountered some health issues during her early career, but in spite of that, went on to Kent State and got a master's degree in education. And later, because of the debilitating mental challenges, committed suicide at a very early age. She had been employed in the Cleveland public school system. She was a brilliant student and perhaps one of Otis III's greatest teachers. I underscore that because when we were asleep and thinking that they were asleep, our daughter Daphne was reading to Otis III. Not just children's books, she was reading Maya Angelou, the literature of the Black experience. We were asleep thinking that they were asleep, and he still carries that heritage joyously and sometimes with a tear and a smile. And I want to thank you for collecting this kind of information regarding the Shaker School District, which is a great school district, but not without challenges. And there is always that need for students, parents, faculty, administrators to be on the cutting edge, to be alert and on guard, to make a great school district great in the area of human relations, diversity, inclusion, and excellence.
All right, I think it's very appropriate. We apologize to Reverend Moss. He's still very active. Is he 88 now? He's very active. So he's all over the place, but I feel like he set the stage. I know I'm supposed to use the mic. He set the stage for what we're going to talk about. Before I introduce the panel, I'm going to recognize what this is all about, which is one of our students. And on our panel representing our students is Nia Clark. She's a junior at Shaker Heights High School. She is a leader with the student group on race relations for school. And she's a past Shaker Heights High School Bridges student. And she currently supports the students of color that are coming behind her in the AP U.S. History program. So give her a round of applause. when the students take time, that's important. That this is the proof of concept why it's so important. So with that, we're asking each panelist to share some of their experiences as Reverend Moss kind of has set the table for us, to pass on knowledge about different decades of educational activism, and how can we continue to empower future generations of parents and students alike in this quest for success. So with that, we're asking each of the panelists to talk a little bit about how they organize their work, what was the mission of their organization, what were some of the obstacles they faced, and what was the transition after they formed their organization, because we've had several different, every decade is a different challenge and a different approach. We're going to begin with Mr. Alpha.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. I moved into Shaker Heights in 1984 with my wife and 3 children. We were in Catholic school, the 2 were. And our house had gotten broken into twice in Cleveland, and consequently, I said, let's find another place to move. So the real estate agent brought us to this house on Menlo, 3569 is the address. One of the things that we asked the real estate agent, what schools will our children go to? And they said, oh, you're in Shaker Heights. I said, oh, that's a pretty good system. And so we enrolled them into the Shaker Heights school system with Miss Mason at that time. It's been a great school system for my 3 children. And I even had one of the grandsons that attended the Shaker school system. And now he's a grown man living down in Columbus. Being the president also of the Moreland on the Move Community Association, which at that time we were the largest and most money in our association at that time. We wanted to go and see the superintendent, who was Mark Freeman at that time. Some of them had gripes that they wanted to clear with Dr. Freeman. And me being the leader, we all went to Dr. Freeman's office and made an appointment. And one of the things he said that stuck in my mind, and I liked Dr. Freeman, even though he's no longer our superintendent. He said, I'm so happy to see all of you here. And I wish that I could see you all at the PTO meetings and all. And I loved it because he was making a point that we, as minorities, weren't attending the PTO sessions and all, which it did help some of them. My wife and I, when we moved here, we got involved. We went to the high school and they had our son, I think it was section 2, which might have been one of the lowest sections, and we looked at the work that they were doing, and we went to the superintendent and says, oh no, he can do better in this section 2. So they gave him a test, and they ended up moving him up, I think, to section 5. But as I say, the Shaker High school system is a decent and wonderful school system, and I applaud all the leadership that is in the school system. I moved to South Euclid. Happy life is a happy wife. But I'm still involved with the Shaker Citizens Police. You'll see me driving around on Friday and Saturday nights in my cars. And I'm still involved in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Appreciate you, sir. Give a round of applause. Next, if you would pass the mic down to Dr. Donna White. And she was a former school board member and also was Moreland on the Move.
Yes.
Dr. White.
Thank you all. I grew up in Cleveland. I grew up in the Mount Pleasant area of Cleveland, and if we know anything about, you know, where Mount Pleasant is, it's right next door. It's right next door. So I've always been familiar with Shaker Heights. But I left, went to college, and came back.
Speak louder.
Came back, okay.
Speak louder.
Okay. I left, came back after 15 years, like many people do, you know, kind of a boomerang to Cleveland. Lived in Cleveland for a year, came back with my children as a single parent. And like, one of the things I had not thought about was that I know people in Cleveland. My mother always shopped at Heinen's. We lived right on 140th and Kinsman. And so I went to Heinen's one day and ran into somebody I had gone all the way through elementary, junior, and senior high school with. I said, where in the world do you live? And she said, I live in Shaker. My thought was, as a young person growing up in Cleveland, Shaker was not necessarily the friendliest place for African Americans. So it was not on my list. However, I didn't have to have much conversation with someone who I had a lot in common with as a young person, and I just moved. Her name is Iris Anderson. A few years later, she called me and said the house next door to me is for sale. We've been neighbors since 1990. That happened over and over again. So I moved into the Moreland community, and I registered my children. Beverly Mason was the registrar, and she said, you have a choice. You can send your children to Fernway, or I said, isn't there a school in the neighborhood? And she said, yes, Moreland Elementary. I said, my children are going to walk to school, like I walked to school, to Rickoff Elementary School in Cleveland. And so I remember someone asking me, I had read an article in the Call and Post about a study that had been done on Shaker schools that said 60% of the white students perform above a B level. 60% of the African American students perform below a C level. And they said, why would you move there? I said, because my children have me. And my children have my parents. And Shaker has opportunity. And that's all we need. That's all we need. And so then again, I ran into somebody I knew that I grew up with who was a parent of a Moreland Elementary School student. Her name is Francie Farmer. Her daughter, Lisa Farmer, called. And she said, you're the type of parent who needs to be involved in PTA. And I want to say to you, Al Foster, when I went to the PTA meetings at Moreland Elementary School, which was predominantly African American, there were very few African American parents at the PTA meetings. I didn't quite understand that, but it didn't keep me from being involved. And then on and on. It was always that someone pulled me in. I didn't start any organization. I was involved with Moreland Community Association. It became Moreland on the Move Community Association. And I followed the lead of people saying, I will invite you in and I will come. I also want to share, and John Addison will certainly speak, but I have to tell you how I know John Addison. In the 9th grade at Alexander Hamilton Junior High School, John Addison was the student teacher in my civics class. And so we go way back.
Outstanding student.
And when you come back as an adult and your civics teacher recognizes you, you're really flattered. You're really flattered, thank you. John told me about Concerned Parents. I saw John at, I think at Beechwood at the high school there, and he said you can get involved with Concerned Parents. So again, people invited me in, which I found to be something that I can say about Shaker. It's easy to get involved in Shaker. So, fast forward, my daughters went through Shaker schools. They were influenced significantly about their education here at Moreland. My oldest daughter, Miata, is involved in the Shaker schools. Many people know her. She pursued her degree in math because she was in math projects right here at Moreland Elementary. My youngest daughter is a musician, songwriter, and she was exposed to theater right here at Moreland Elementary. But everything wasn't great. Everything wasn't great. And as a parent, I said, well, I'll go to teacher conferences and all, and I will only really just show up in the teacher's doorway when I think there's a problem with race. And I'll tell you a story about one time where I thought that was the reason that I had to show up. My youngest daughter was in an AP English class. She had been told by her teacher, and I won't leave the teacher, that she did not write her own paper. And so my daughter told my mother, My mother, I can't say enough about my parents. I did not raise my children. I was a single parent, but I wasn't really single. My parents were here. And they were retired, so they were just as involved. And so she told my daughter that she had lied, that she had not really written her paper, AP English, maybe 2 weeks after the class started. And my mother said, well, you know, does your teacher know who your mother is? That's not a good idea for her to say that to you. So I asked my daughter, I said, what time is your class? She said, it's first period. I said, I'm going to school with you. I said, if the door's open, can parents just walk in? This was a long time ago. She said, yes. I said, I'm going with you. So I just showed up in the doorway of the teacher's classroom. I said, this is my daughter. She says, I see. So what I did was, I went to the counselor and I said, can you arrange for my daughter to be in another class? And he did. You know, not the first time I had talked to a counselor, just very willing. Everybody, yes, okay, we arranged. Came back and the teacher said, okay, we'll meet after school. She never looked at me. She addressed my daughter. And, you know, long story short, she said, no problem. She changed my daughter's grade. I said, that's not why I'm here. She had given her a D. She said somebody else wrote her paper. My daughter said I was laying in the bed like this writing my paper. So it didn't look like my handwriting. She didn't know my daughter. And so, long story short, she said, I trust your daughter. I said, but that's not the problem. I have to make sure my daughter trusts you. So I told my daughter, I said, well, if there's ever a time during the year that you raise your hand and she doesn't call on you, let me know. Never heard a word. She said she was so nice to her after that. And I said to myself, how could she possibly say what she did to my daughter? And I did perceive it as a situation that was racial. Like I said, I would only show up like that if it was race. If it was performance, I could talk to my kids. So that was one of the more extreme situations. There may have been a few others, but not many. Not many at all. Not many at all. Most of our experiences were extremely positive. I was involved with concerned parents, I think it was, or you know, a little bit later when my oldest daughter was in high school. And somebody at a meeting I was with said, you should run for the school board. And I won't go into that, but I took that advice, ran for the school board, and had the privilege of serving on the school board in the early 90s. And my thought was that if I could advocate for my children, I can advocate for everybody's children. Very often, parents would not necessarily do what I had done. And I wanted to be able to see and to be able to represent as well as I could the voices of children in Shaker and of families, and try to find my way. And it's very easy in Shaker to do that, to get involved. All you have to do is just listen to when people invite you in and just go through the door. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White, and that was some good advice that we all have to step up. I think even now, parents do have to intercede with teachers and administrators as well as advisors, and so you have to be hands-on. So I appreciate that. We've had to do some of those similar things even to this day. Next, we'll have Mr. John Addison. Reverend Moss already did a great introduction of him, so I'm going to let him proceed. Mr. John Addison, who's one of our former administrators here in Shaker, and of course, he brought the Push Excel program to the Shaker schools.
Well, first, I'm going to give more like a report of what we were trying to do. If you want to deal with obstacles, you can ask that in your questions. I'm also going to suggest something that I think we should give more attention to. You may or may not agree, but I'm 85 years old, almost 85, I'll be 85 in October. I may not have another opportunity to share how I feel about this. And I'm going to say what I want to say.
Yes, sir.
Push it, in 1979, the Shaker City School District and Operation Push, People United to Serve Humanity, under the local leadership of Reverend Otis Marks Jr., collaborated to implement Operation Push's Push Excel program. The ultimate goal of the program was to involve the total community in pushing for excellence in education. Note, I have referred to Push Excel as a program. However, and that's what it was most commonly called. However, Reverend Jesse Jackson, the founder of Operation Push, wanted it to be a movement in which the entire community saw themselves as having a responsibility to help schools become places where all children are encouraged to grow strong and have access to equal opportunities. National Push Excel did have 5 objectives for local schools: improve attendance for parents and students. Just a moment. That attendance for parents has already been discussed. I wanted to discuss it at length. I took it out of my paper because I was going on too long. But that's something that we must think about. Presence is preventative, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Also, atmosphere, attitude, and achievement. In November of 1979, I was hired to direct the implementation of Push Excel using Shaker Heights High School as a base. The school district hired Mr. Henry Woodard and Mrs. Mary Lynn McGovern to assist me. Knowing the goal and major objectives of Push Excel, we started out by attempting to get the attention of African American students, their parents, and district administrators. We recruited students to help us participate in creating a movement at Shaker High School first. Participating youth received Push Excel pins and met with us to discuss student achievement and potential motivation activities. They helped distribute and hang signs throughout the high school with Excel slogans: conceive it, believe it, and achieve it. Attitude determines altitude. And please note, excellence is an attitude, not a skill. In addition to getting the attention of students, we wanted the attentions of parents and staff. We collected data to show the differences in number and percent of Black and white students in regular and advanced classes, and data to show the difference in the performance, which my friend Donna White has already mentioned that. Well, the data showed, as she said, that the academic performance outcomes of Black students were dramatically lower than that of white students. We prepared graphs and charts to visually show this information. In our first year, we discussed the data in the homes of approximately 90 Black families, and I might mention that was in the evenings. And we also shared it with the concerned parents, an African American education advocacy group, and with the central office and district administrators. We discussed what we could do to make a difference. We formed a student Push Excel team. Their input influenced many of the activities implemented. Yearly, we invited high-achieving, informative, and inspirational African American speakers such as Dr. Julian Earls, who at that time headed the Cleveland branch of NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Yearly, we showcased the giftedness of Black students through talent shows at the high school. We celebrated Black History Month with the Sankofa program, and it is still an annual event there. Also, yearly, we took students to Operation Push annual meetings. During the time I directed Push Excel and after, I saw changes take place in the high school and the district. The number of African American administrators and teachers in the district increased. Data related to disparities between the achievements and participation in advanced classes and extracurricular activities of African American and white students was collected and discussed more openly in administrative meetings. The student group on race relations was formed. After I was no longer at the high school, Mrs. McGovern was appointed to be an academic academic advisor. Students came to her and Mr. Hubert McIntyre and requested the formation of the Mac Scholars, a program to encourage the achievement of Black students and eventually the Mac Sisters. These programs still exist. While I worked at the high school and in the central office, the district brought prominent Black and white educators to conduct seminars about Black student achievement and best practices for administrators and teachers. During the 29 years that I served in the Shaker School District, many changes occurred that good people, including parents, students, school staff, and community partners work for. So, can we now sit down, fold our hands, and rest? What do you think? Is there an acceptable African-American parent presence in the Shaker School District, relating back to parents showing up? Is the atmosphere in the schools conducive for all students to maximize their experience in the schools? Do most of the African-American students have an attitude that leads them to push for excellence? Is the achievement level for African-Americans acceptable? We need to answer those questions so we can go on. In my 61 years as a teacher, administrator, and now a tutor at Bolton Pre-K-8 School in Cleveland, Ohio, I have seen more African-American students than I want to see in the schools with self-esteem, exposure to basic reading and counting skills, self-confidence, and stick-to-itiveness that is not strong enough for them to get a satisfactory school experience. Too many of them are likely to underperform, are slow to take advantage of opportunities offered, and become distractions. The challenge of preparing students for the school environment is a struggle for too many African American parents for a host of reasons. Giving struggling parents the kind of encouragements that helps them show up in school and plant seeds of strength in our children is essential. If we are to substantially improve school atmospheres and help our children maximize their potential, we need to find what we can do to help our parents who are challenged. I ask and hope that this last issue will get more attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Addison, for the lesson, as well as the challenging questions. Next, we'll have Judge Emanuela Groves. She didn't bring her gavel, but she's going to bring us some knowledge and wisdom about caring communities organized for education, which she was a part of founding, as were many others during her tenure as a parent and activist in Shaker Schools.
Thank you.
Judge Groves.
I didn't bring my gavel, but I have my timer because in the Court of Appeals, when your time is up, it goes beep, beep, beep. So I have a lot that I could talk about with caring communities and also just the journey of my children. So I am going to try to put in as much information as I can before the time goes. And I did reserve 30 seconds to sum it all up. So my husband and I moved into the city of Cleveland Shaker School District in 1985. I'm from Canton, Ohio. So I was not familiar with Cleveland at all. My husband grew up in Cleveland and he continues to be committed to the city of Cleveland. And so happy wife balance was that we would live in Cleveland, but in the Shaker School District. Initially, our daughter started out because we wanted to have our children attend a Christian school. We started out for only 6 weeks at Bethlehem Christian School. We saw there it was not child-centered, but teacher-driven. And as a result of that, we pulled our daughter in October, having only started school in August, because It was not the development of the cognitive skills. It was rote memory, and we knew in a very short time period that that was not the learning environment that we wanted to give our child. And plus, we were driving 30 minutes, and we live on Drexelmore, and Boulevard is a 7-minute walk to the school. And so we were driving by this beautiful school because we were trying to find a balance of both character, and not to say you can't get that in a public school system, but we just felt that that was not the place for our child. And so at that time, Shaker was going through a study in terms of achievement. I got involved immediately, my husband got involved, and so by the time her kindergarten year was finished, I was the treasurer of the parent-teacher organization, not just at Boulevard, but for the entire Shaker school system. And so with that, I had an opportunity to have access to information that I would not have had otherwise. Was very alarmed when we learned of the data, the disaggregate data in terms of performance of Black students. Only 20% of Black students graduated in the top of the class. And so we were alarmed. As an African American, we know that education is the basis on which to have upward mobility. And so how are we going to sustain that when we see within the school system that the performance of the students was so disproportionate? We had a meeting initially with the superintendent. There were 12 families. He promised us that our children would do well. But the issue was if the child sitting next to our child was not doing well, did not create a culture of excellence. And so we formed an organization, Caring Communities Organized for Education. I see Rosalind English and Nancy Jones, who are part of that organization. We formed our organization in February. And one of the issues at that time, there was no summer school. And I think part of it was, you know, Shaker, if we do so well, we educate our children so well, there's no need for summer school. It's a time for enrichment, but we felt that there was a need to have summer school. So in February we formed, and by June, we started a summer program. And within that program, we had small class sizes. What we did was we dealt with the academics in the morning, and we felt that it was important for children to understand and have an appreciation of their culture. So in the afternoon, we had dance, African dance, we had a program where students would present, there was music, and we felt that it was the enrichment, and we wanted the students to feel good about learning because many of them did not have positive experience during the school year. So we started the summer program. By the next year, my son was in kindergarten. Began to continue to look at what was going on within the school, and we felt that coming together as an organization that we could, one, empower parents. Second, we could also try to address some systemic issues. One was no summer school, right? And so we continued to do summer school every summer. We had as many as 100 students in the summer. The district was very cooperative in our partnership. Our summer school took place at the middle school. We only charged enough to pay our teachers. And we felt that it was very important. As a matter of fact, but one summer we had a teacher who was from the Cleveland Public Schools, and we walked, I was the administrator of the program, walked in, and the children, their heads were on the desk. It was like, we don't do that here. We don't have our children, you would never walk into a classroom shaking with their heads on the desk. So we corrected that. But we also made sure that there was just a very positive experience. We did summer, we did field trips. And so we continue to do that. We continue to look at the data. My son in the 2nd grade was not in the first reading group. His sister was in the first reading group. They were one day less than a year apart. We struggled with the decision of whether or not to put him in the middle group or put him in the top group. And so he wanted to read the Littles, the book. He couldn't wait because that's the book that his daughter read. And so we made the decision that, Gregory, we don't want you to struggle when you read. We can read the Littles at home. And so we kept him in the middle reading group. But I was volunteered in the school. By the 3rd grade, there were no white children in the 2nd or the lower middle reading group. Some of the children struggled, but their parents made sure that they were in the top reading group. So by the time the 4th grade came, the other Black friends that Gregory had, they were no longer in the district. So we had to make the decision, we pulled our child. He went to Ruffin. There's no question that if he had stayed in the Shaker School District, he would not have ended up at Princeton for a number of reasons. At that time, they had the tracking system. And so you weren't even able to get in the tracking system if you weren't placed in it. You could go in and by the, I think it was the 5th grade or the 6th grade, but it's like opening up the elevator, all the other children started on the ground floor. Now you're in the 5th grade, they've had all the enrichment, all the experience, and you open up the door and say, hey, everybody is welcome now. It would be impossible to be able to really compete and to really be able to thrive in an environment where you're not starting from the ground with everyone else. And so it was important, that was the reason why we pulled our son. But we continue, I only got 30 seconds. We continued to be involved. We continued, even though we pulled our son, because we thought it was best for him. We continued to be involved. By that point, my husband we had gotten grant money through the Cleveland Foundation for drums and audio equipment, and then eventually the district did begin to have summer school within the district. But I think 2 of the things that we did and we felt was critical, number 1, the importance of having summer school, and eventually Shaker began to have it within the district. And the second thing was to continue to challenge them with the tracking. Because with the tracking, it already identifies your child's capability. And we just knew to keep our son in that school district. When our daughter was tracked in the top level, that we did not want our son to feel in fear. I'm going to end with the one example when we pulled him in the 4th grade. My daughter came home. She's in the 5th grade. She's in the math that's advanced. She came home with a problem, and she asked for some help. Gregory had only been at Roughing for 2 months. He looked at the problem and said, I can help you. That confirmed to us that we made the right choice. He would have never had the confidence if he had stayed there. So I want to end with the challenge becomes when we dealt with the school district, the board, we were told we were the group du jour. And that's true. My daughter's 34, my son is 33. And now there's a group that came after. So I think the real challenge is going to have to have an organization that is sustainable, that does not change every time parents pass through and their children have graduated. And when you can have this sustainability, you're not reinventing the wheel. I'm hearing things that Mr. Addison was doing that we were doing. And in Sankofa, we thought, because there was an issue at the high school, they weren't having Sankofa when our children were coming through. So here, for the first time, it's like, because there was an issue, and like, we don't even have a Black History program. That was in February. And so through Parent Communities, we helped organize Sankofa, and they started doing that. So there are gaps along the way because the parents changed, but the issues are the same. And so I think the challenge becomes for us is how do we have the sustainability so that we don't have a gap and we're reinventing the wheel after every generation of children that come through. Because there are no do-overs. 1 year, you can't get back. And that was the concern that we had. But I'm glad to be a part of this, and I look forward to, we have already passed the baton, but hopefully as we pass the baton, it's just in leadership and not the formation of a new organization, of a new organization addressing the same issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. We do have one of our students here, so please hear ye Nia Clark. She's a junior. She's a score leader and also a student bridges leader at Shaker Heights High School.
My name is Nia Clark. I'm a junior in high school right now. Louder? Okay. I will say that I wasn't always pushing for excellence. I'll start with that. My 8th grade year and my freshman year were rough. I was going through a lot of changes, a lot of things at home, and I was letting it affect my school life. And it took running with the wrong crowd and being with the wrong friends to realize that I was more mature than that and that I was way smarter than that. And that's when I decided that I was going to use my smarts. And that's when I decided to join AP US History my 10th grade year. It was originally meant to sit me down because in 9th grade, global studies was too easy for me. So I would finish the work and disrupt the class. But when I started 10th grade AP US history, it's at me now. It was hard at first because I didn't understand most of the curriculum. The syllabus was long. I was nervous about the test, and the test was a year away. There was a huge project dead in the middle of everything, and it took up a lot of my time. But I pushed through, and it was one of the best experiences I could have ever given myself. I thank my teacher every day. I still go and see him and bother him in class. But it opened a lot of doors for me and set up a lot of opportunities. It's probably the reason I joined SCORE and eventually joined CORE, because I've always been a leader. That's never gonna change. Ever since I was a little girl, I was always a line leader, stuff like that. But I really embraced it after AP US history. I ended the class off with a B, so, you know, I was pretty proud of myself for that. It wasn't an A, but it was something. What else? And when I joined SCORE and CORE and everything, I thought this is what I want to do. Like, I always want to uplift people and let them know that we're here because of people on this panel. There's people that come before us. The context is always the most important part of the lesson. I am the youngest person here, and I don't have that much experience. But I do know where I can go with what I'm doing right now. I do know what I'm doing is important. I do know coming to panels like this on a random Saturday is going to lead up to something. That's why I always say yes when Mr. Warren asks me to do something. Where's he at? He's back there. And it led me to do a lot of other things, like be on a first generation team called the Flag Corps at Shaker. We've been talking about it for 15 years. And we finally made it a team this year, and becoming a captain was confirmation that I could keep doing stuff like this. So that was great. We had our first game yesterday. And when I became a core leader, it kind of set in stone the fact that I always wanted to be a leader in certain rooms like this. So in rooms like Bridges and everything, when we went to Detroit, and there were 11th graders at the time telling me, hey, this is a good class for you, this is what you can do, these are your resources. I know I wanted to be that person for younger people. So, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Clark, for having the courage to share your story, and thanks for looking out for my daughter, Chloe, because she's a year behind you. She did Bridges AP this summer, so I appreciate you very much. You're definitely a leader. This time we're going to hear from Dr. Vilma Seberg. Dr. Vilma has done a lot of research on this, but she's also a parent, and she's been involved on a personal level. So let me turn the microphone over to Dr. Vilma.
Thank you, and I want to say, Naya, you are part of one of those sustained organizations that Judge Groves was talking about. SCORE has been around for a while and has sustained itself. So we adults have something to learn from you students who've managed to keep up the good work in an organization like that. If you would tell your fellow and sister, Max sisters and stuff, they too have been around for quite some time now since Bush. Yes. So we should uplift them as organizations that we need to feature a lot, because you guys have done a great job for a long, long time. So as my story, in 1985, my husband and I moved to Cleveland, and as a biracial couple, we were looking for a community that would welcome us and our expected biracial children. That's why we moved into a multiracial neighborhood in Cleveland on the border of Shaker and Shaker schools. Just like most families who were moving into Shaker at that time, after all of the tumultuous years of the housing desegregation in the 50s and 60s. We learned quickly, though, that Shaker was not so unlike the rest of the country where race was concerned. My commitment to dismantling the systems of racism goes way back to what I learned at my grandparents' knees. Both they and my parents were refugees in Germany after the devastation of the Second World War, the Holocaust, and the Nazification of many of their countrymen. And this is important for us to know these days. My parents brought us to start over in the New World when I was 12. Like many survivors, we thought never again. And then I learned about anti-Black racism in the segregated high school that I attended in Virginia. And my path to a lifelong practice and academic pursuit of rooting out racial hatred was set. My family and I have not been immune from the damages caused by the cultural wars in this country on diversity, equity, and inclusion. My daughter started elementary in the Shaker schools, where we often had to maneuver around racialized barriers posed by teachers that were enabled by the system of the school. As one of my co-authors for the book that was mentioned on family engagement wrote in her story, in her article, it was the students, in our case, who enforced divides between children based on their visible diversities. The adults were blind to the harm that was created. In our case, the stereotypical white mean girls, starting in 4th grade, throughout middle school, drove my daughter out of school. By then, she had lost her confidence and academic drive and refused to go to school. She became part of the dropout statistics that Shaker is not proud of. I had to search for, and I did find, my parent-to-parent pod of other ostracized kids. And together, we helped our kids get through in a different high school, not a public school. In 2000, around that time, my neighbor, Reuben Harris, pulled me into what Caring Communities had been doing in Shaker. At the time, the negative narratives about Black students prevailed. It had occurred to few folks to ask instead how Black American families successfully navigated the Shaker Heights schools, because they did. By inverting John Agu's question, some of you may know his work, about Black underperformance in Shaker, we inquired into Black resilience in the face of formidable challenges, as Zeus Leonardo Berkeley wrote in the review of the book. Seaberg and the Shaker research and parent team, and I want to mention Nancy Jones back there, who was on the research team and was a member of Caring Communities, draw our attention to Black folks' discourses of defiance against despair and deficit orientations. Family engagement is a counter story about education as an arc of hope for everyday people who refuse the long shadow of injustice. One can't help rooting for them after reading the book, and I hope that Share Pods and Share as an outgrowth offers that kind of hope. We, in the book, documented how Shaker Black folk had been organizing for educational justice persistently and effectively over the long term, as you heard from the previous presenters here. Our research did reveal the micro-processes that effectively counter injustice in the schools. The gateway to student success is intergenerational Black families getting together in their neighborhoods to share their stories, their legacy of struggles and uplift, as well as their resources, and help each other advocate for their students. This lays the foundation for students to step out into the school with a strong Black identity that armors them against 1,000 daily cuts and empowers them to strive for Black excellence. We call those parent-to-parent get-togethers Share Pods. So we invite you to get together with your school neighbors around your kitchen tables, forming pods of hope to support your kids and further bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice. Oh, yes, and back at the tables and back, we have sign-ups for these share pods. We don't want you just to go home. Please stay with us. So we have the share pods back there along with some refreshments. And you can get there after a question and answer period, which we will have shortly. We will reconvene in the share pods on Saturday, a week from now, same time, same place, right here in the library. But before we do question and answer, I would like to introduce our members of the share team. That's Roz English, Nancy Jones, and Xiao Qi Yu. Right here, stand up quickly. Thank you for standing up. And Deb Moore has joined us more recently, so please give her a hand as well. And then I'd like to introduce Dr. Larry Burnley, Shaker School's Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and right back there, and he's going to say a couple words. And Keith Langford, where are you, Keith? There he is. There he is. He's the supervisor of family and community engagement. If you would like to say a couple of words, I want to thank you for supporting the work of the SharePod initiative and for supporting the videotaping of this panel, which will be located in a couple of weeks. You can get access to it here in the library. It'll be on the website, the library, Shaker Heights Library's history page. It will be stored there. And with that, as one more announcement I want to make, later today at 5:30, there is, let me get this right, sorry, pod's out of my mind, Porch Talk commemorating Martin Luther King's speech at Eastway United Church of Christ on Van Aken. Eastview. It's at 5:30 tonight, and Connie Schultz will be talking. Will be the speaker today, so you may want to attend that as well. So with that, Dr. Burnley, a word or two?
Thank you. Seriously, first of all, I want to just identify two other people who are in the room that I want to know. One is William Warren. William, stand up, please. William is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Coordinator. He has administrative oversight of SCORE, MAC, Bridges, and a number of other things that he does. He just completed his first year. Really blessed to have him as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge him. And I wanted to also acknowledge the presence of one of our board members, Ms. Pam Scott, who is Thank you. I want to offer thanks to Dr. Steberg, who and her shared team. We met a couple of months ago, and I shared a story with you about a conversation I had with Judge Groves. I said that Judge Groves shared a wonderful story about what she shared today, about a movement of black parents in the 90s that responded, that in the words of one of the candidates for presidency nationally did something, and they did something. I mentioned it, and I said, wow, what a blessing it would be if we could gather people and tell that story. And you did something with that, and here we are. What I want to encourage us, including myself, is that we have to do something. We're here, we're standing on the shoulders of these giants and others. The position I hold, the office that we have, we're in the process of developing a sustainable, high-impact infrastructure to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion across and beyond the district. But we're doing it at a time where there is significant, well-organized, well-funded efforts to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion across the country. In fact, the term or the acronym of DE&I is being co-opted. So I'm starting to say diversity, equity, and inclusion more than DE&I, so we're clear in terms of what we're talking about. So we need you. We need you. I've said to Judge Groves, I said to Mr. Foster, I said to Dr. Seaberg, Dr. White, and others, I often get Black parents coming to me as individuals with very valid concerns. Valid concerns. Rarely do I see Mr. McIntosh in the room. Well, we have to acknowledge McIntyre, rather. One of the founders and giants and icons of the MAC program. So I just want to acknowledge. Thank you. And so we need to organize. We need to organize. I told our superintendent, he hears me say this often, I talk with parents, I said, we need you to hold us accountable and we need you to be organized and come as not only as individuals, but as groups, right? You've heard powerful stories about parents coming together, making a difference, and we make it together. And so I invite that. I'm happy to come and talk to you more about the work that we're doing. We are doing some things, and some gaps are closing. We're looking at the data. We need you to show up to the board meetings. If you can't show up in person, tune in. Hold us accountable. We're doing some good things. And the last thing I'll share, let's define our terms. When I arrived here 2.5 years ago, and I'm an alum of the district, and the MAC Scholarship, I'll mention this, the MAC Scholarship is in the name of my son. It's a memorial scholarship, Rashad Burnley. So it's an honor for me to be back here. Thank you. But I heard about Black excellence. I heard this term being used. And I was asking, what does that mean? Have we defined that? What is that? Is it different than white excellence? What is that? You said, sir, earlier today, you said something about excellence. It's an attitude. It's not a skill, it's an attitude. But it's the beginning of defining that term and owning that term, because how we use it will drive what we do and inform what we're trying to achieve. So thank you very much. We're working hard across the district. I'm going to quote Kamala Harris, because this is on my email signature. It's been there for 2 years, so this is not about her running for president. I say here, this is a quote, I should have this memorized, and I'll end with this. We will not be able to understand and confront the problems of today unless we are honest about how we arrived at this point. And I share with my colleagues across the senior leadership team in Shaker, it's one thing to recognize historic gaps. It's another thing to want to close those gaps, but we can't close those gaps until we understand how we arrived here. We need to understand the policy and practice over time, not only that really informs those gaps, but how they persist, but how they affect ourselves in terms of how we lead, right? So I'm so encouraged by this, and I look forward to working with you moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burnley, and the team here at the district is working hard at this. Dr. Gilmer, do we want to take some Q&A for a few minutes and then go from there? So I will open up the floor and I'll bring the mic to you. Are there any questions for our esteemed panel? Everybody's ready to go to work? All right. Awesome.
Thank you. I'm Hazel Bryn Young. I'm actually a parent of 2 children who finished Orange, but a lot of the issues that you're describing are similar or identical to what we experienced.
Talking to the mic.
But the main thing I think is, as also was suggested, is parental involvement. And then one other comment, I'm a physician at University Hospitals, and I'm always trying to find students who want a career in medicine to shadow me.
The mic. Talking to the mic, yes.
I'm sorry. I'm a physician at University Hospitals of Cleveland, and I'm always looking to find students who are interested in medicine who want to shadow me, because that opportunity is not readily available most times.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. I actually have a question for Naya. Is it Naya or Nia? Naya. First of all, Naya, wow, you are amazing. And so my question my question is, as you explained your journey in becoming self, the awareness you gained, how did that happen? And, you know, what was the turning point for you? What was that spark? Or, you know, how did you come to understand that I need to make some changes, and you made those positive changes? And have you been able to share that with any of your peers who you might see similarly situated, you know, how you were similarly situated, and have you been able to share that knowledge with any of them?
Okay, first of all, it's a great question. What was the turning point? I would say the turning point was me getting my heart broken and realizing that I was way smarter than that. And because the decisions I was making led up to that happening, because if I was making conscious decisions instead of going against my gut, then it wouldn't have happened. I would say another factor to that is just social media, actually, because being on social media, you can see what everyone's doing, and not everyone grew up with that, and you can't see, like back in the day, you couldn't see what everyone was doing. And the fact that I could see everything happening, and I could see what the bad influences that were happening, and be like, that's gonna be me in 3 years if I don't change what I'm doing. And it didn't take my mom telling me and stuff like that, because she would tell me the stuff I was already thinking, and it just took me listening to myself. As far as influencing other kids, I would say I influenced some people in the friend group that I was in, because they saw me accomplishing all these things and be like, wow, Naya, great job, oh my gosh, and how'd you do this, and blah, blah, blah. I had to tell them, you can do the exact same thing if you just put yourself in the right situation, put yourself in the right rooms, and put yourself in front of the right people. Because that's how I was raised. Some people aren't raised the same, but it doesn't take your parents to help you. Because I didn't get here from my parents, I walked. So sometimes it takes doing it yourself. And I think telling other kids that makes them open their eyes and be like, okay, this is my life, this is no one else's life. You're born alone and you're dying alone. So you have to take control of what's yours.
Anyone else?
Being a 25-year-old Marine with a cane, I've got to stand up because Naya, I really appreciate your story and what you said.
Thank you, Mr. Cosby.
Yeah.
You always get a history lesson.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
And I want to direct this to Judge Groves, but anyone can respond. You talked about sustainability, the importance of that. What are the elements, the factors, looking back, what would you do differently that maybe would allow for or result in the sustainability of that program or other kinds of efforts that tend to come and go?
I think probably maybe perhaps, because we did incorporate, we were a corporation, and I think probably part of the sustainability is to try to make sure that having a succession plan as our children were moving through the school system, that you have younger parents that are engaged. I think that is critical. I think one of the things, I'm going to applaud Naya again. I think part of the challenge that I see, even when I sit as a judge, or I did as a trial court judge, is that we hold the most vulnerable responsible for circumstances that they don't control. I think in terms of for children who do not feel valued, for children who don't feel a part of the school system, we can't wait until they get to the scholars program. It needs to start happening in the kindergarten. I will give an example, and then I'm going to stop. With my daughter, when she was in kindergarten, and at that time, Boulevard was pretty well balanced racially. But, you know, there was one little black boy who wanted to play with a group of white kids. And the little white kid says, well, Angela is like us. And so the black child was not allowed to play, you know, within that group. So we really need to start earlier, and we need to let our young people know that you are excellent, you are smart, you are bright, but there are so many verbal and nonverbal signs and signals that relegate them to a second-class citizenship and a lower level of learning. And I think that is probably one of the missing pieces. With care communities, we had talked about many of our children start behind in the kindergarten. It's like, so what can we do? Can we give a list? By the time your child starts school, they need to know their ABCs, they need to know how to count, they need to know these things. And the response was, it's not what they know, but it's the development of the cognitive skills. And so how do you verbalize that? How do you have a plan as students move into, and families move into the district, that they understand that these are the things that you need to try to instill in your child? And some of the things as an educator, I cannot really articulate, but I knew when he said it because I knew the experience that we had at Bethlehem. That the child could just spit out stuff, but they did not connect the dots in terms of the development of the cognitive skills. And so how can we as a community, how can we make sure that our children don't feel behind from day one? I presume they still have the kindergarten and diagnostic instrument, right? And so even then they begin to identify. Right? And just as an aside, because I know the time is over, my daughter didn't graduate from Shaker because it wasn't only about the academics. She was a basketball player. And there was a lot of instability in the basketball program. And I know that the councilwoman is here, and Angela's jersey is retired at halfway ground, first to score 1,000 points. But we just felt that it was time also at that point to pull our child, because we had to make decisions that were best for our children. But I still was very involved when the superintendent Hutchins came. I was on a couple of the boards, not boards, a couple of committees that we had. So the sustainability, we got to start pulling kindergarten parents to be a part of the organization. I think whatever structure that comes in place, and that I think is how you're going to get the continuity and the sustainability, so that when we move out, I'm a grandmother now, that the issues and the challenges, because it is systemic. It is systemic, and it continues to be.
If I can add to that. If I can add to that, so Shaker has decided to expand its preschool program. That's the time to start out. That's the time to meet the other parents. That's the time to get together, and that's where we want to have these share pods. And a big issue on top of the cognitive is the socio-emotional learning of the kids, which is what you focus on in preschool. And that's when they really have to start focusing on these kids dividing each other into different groups and deciding who is a better group and who is a less good group. So that's why we ask you to sign up for these share pods in your neighborhood, so we can get people involved where they live, so they don't have to necessarily get on a bus and go to a meeting, but that we can have these kitchen table talks where people feel at home with the people in their neighborhood, that they can discuss these issues, whether they're cognitive problems that they're encountering in the schools, or whether we can teach each other how to read the colors earlier, understand the colors, need to mathematics, but also the socio-emotional, that we are all of us kids are okay. It doesn't matter whether we look like each other, we are okay. And we need to go through this together. So please sign up for SharePods. Even if your kids aren't in schools anymore, you have neighbors who are, and we'd love to have you contact them, and so that we can stay in touch and start this new renewal of organizations that help each other, where people help each other. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. I wanted to thank our panelists, thank our administrators. It's been an honor to serve as your moderator. Okay, I didn't keep you on time, but I think this was such a valuable discussion. How many folks in this room have students in the district right now? All right, so we got a few. So we need to continue to spread the word. So my challenge is to the committee is to use social media, to use the ways that our young families, right, are communicating. Because this room should be 3 times the size. There should be a lot more parents here. So you have some work to do. That's my challenge to you, is to use social media, talk to the young people about how messaging gets to our young parents. Because if they're gonna start in kindergarten, they need to know this now. And so, and those of you who have parents in the district, please find 5, your children's friend group or whatever, find 5 families that you know and share this information. So again, please sign up in the back, please mix and mingle. You have more time to talk to our esteemed panelists and learn more about how to empower our kids. Thank you so much for being here. And if Dr. Burnley and the rest of the community come forward,